Hey there and welcome back to another My Hero Academia review, and today we'll be talking about the latest episode to drop, The High Deep Blue Sky, which serves as the finale for Season 5, wrapping up a number of storylines such as the Paranormal Liberation Front's creation and the Work Studies programs. But beyond that, it also serves as an introduction of sorts to the next massive arc of the show, the Meta Liberation War, which will make up a big part of Season 6, and if you've read the manga, you'll know that this arc is insane and super dark. So really, I'm looking forward to next season's relevant future plot points and details. But for the purpose of these reviews, I really only like to talk about what the manga's presented up to now and not go back and forth between the manga and the anime. It just helps keep the reviews streamlined and allows anime-only fans to watch along and join in too. But with all that being said, and I guess this is set just before Hawks' storyline in the Endeavor Agency arc, it's revealed that in order to get to the Liberation Front meeting, he had to supposedly murder Best Jeanist and deliver his corpse to Darby. But it's clear that there's some deception going on here. Because 1, it's completely out of character for Hawks to actually do that based on what we know of him. 2, I doubt the Hero Commission would sign off on the murder of the number 3 hero. And 3, even Darby sort of casts some doubt on whether this is actually Best Jeanist's corpse in the body bag. He's just happy that there's a corpse at all, with the additional high-end Nomus added on top of that. Makes Hawks realise they're going to need every possible hero to fight them, which is probably where the need for the compulsory first-year work studies came from. We then transition to Shigaraki, where he's about to undergo the treatment to give him some additional power, like we saw at the end of the Endeavor arc. The doctor asks him, why does Shigaraki even want more power? With Shigaraki replying that he wants more powers because they're on offer, and that he needs them because his quirk has severe backlash. And these are actually some really strong Deku parallels, but he's almost like the anti-Deku. When they first fully unlocked their quirk, Deku's super strength and Shigaraki's decay, it left their body broken and beaten. But whilst Deku worked hard to improve himself and unlock new powers through his drive, Shigaraki's taking the easy way, getting injected with new powers and not doing the work to prepare his body for his quirk. Although I guess you can offset that with the fact that Shigaraki has to endure 4 months of constant agony to get the powers he needs. The doctor tells him that after the process completes, he'll be able to gain any power he wants, even one for all, and reveals to Shigaraki that All For One created the quirk and desires it above all else. Which definitely looked like it was news to Shigaraki. So now I'm wondering whether this is going to inspire Shigaraki even more, or drive a wedge between him and All For One for lying to him. Either way, I doubt that's the last we hear of that particular story thread. This little sequence was cool, and we got to see how all the different Hero Corps students have grown without really needing to follow them too closely. Anyway, we see that Ayama's invented a new move, the Naval Saber, which lets light now. So, does that mean she can manipulate light to make herself visible? Or would that be too much effort for her? And we also see that Mina's innovated a new form based on Kirishima's Unbreakable called Acid Man. And I have to say, that shot of Mina covered in acid after destroying the robots, it's cursed. Maybe I just have a filthy mind, but the animators had to know what that looked like, right? Surely? Because I'm sure that there are many artists now running wild with not safe for work fan art. Like, there's no way that couldn't have run through their heads. And moving on, at this point we get a little montage of what everybody's been improving at. And whilst many of them weren't all that noteworthy, I thought Sero, Mineta and Kaminari's team attack was pretty cool, and Deku's Black Whip has gotten even stronger. And it was kind of bittersweet to see that Deku's sort of outgrown his need for All Might's constant presence and reassurance. It's awesome that he's grown as a hero, but I felt sad for All Might. He's basically become a dad for this kid, and he's beginning to get outgrown. And also, I feel like Deku with his super strength, can those things even get decayed? If not, it's game over, surely. Also, the Deku Uraraka fist bump was cute. And the slow burn is hurting my soul. We move on to see Aizawa and Present Mike looking pretty upset by the revelations they received at the prison when they saw Kurogiri and discovered he was their long-dead friend from high school. Millions getting his quirk back sooner rather than later. Also, Eri crying in Nejire's arms whilst Aizawa pats her on the head soothed my soul. It was just so cute! We then move on to an All Might Bakugo Midoriya meeting where they discuss the quirks of the past users of One For All. Or at least the quirks that All Might was able to figure out, with the second and third users' quirks remaining a mystery. Deku then starts talking about Black Whip and how it's only useful as a utility quirk, as he can only control it for a second, and thus it isn't as useful as Sero's quirk or Aizawa's support use of anime time dissonance ever. Based on how he's used it so far, he can control it for much longer than a second. He's used it to destroy robots, lift cars, pull down pipes. Come on. It is far more useful and far more powerful than the show's giving it credit for. Anyway, moving on, Bakugo goes on to discuss how all the quirks in the book were quite weak, and that the heroes are virtually nobodies. which All Might explains by telling them that All For One would kill all the top heroes during his reign of terror. Those who were powerful would get snuffed out, which means those with weaker quirks had a better chance of avoiding being targeted. And this sounds pretty Lord Voldemort to me. Those that had the power were never glorious Chosen One heroes with super quirks. They merely cultivated the power and often died young fighting All For One, with All Might being the one exception. And of course, this conversation sets up Deku to unlock his next quirk, Float, which was All Might's master's quirk, and the quirk that's going to be the most useful in surviving Shigaraki's upgraded decay. And of course, Bakugo can't fall to his death. And it's honestly crazy how far these two have come from Season 1 to now. From bully and victim, to rivals, and now to dysfunctional brothers. I'm loving there were still some glorious parts to the scene, even if they didn't serve that much of a purpose. I think the best part by far was Bakugo telling Todoroki that his poor chive cutting skills would have made his sister cry, and that he should die. It was just so unexpected, and yet the exchange was just the perfect representation of both their characters. And I love their dynamic, honestly. Todoroki being the clueless friend, and Bakugo being driven to unprecedented levels of anger, just having to deal with him. And I also really enjoyed Deku not listening to Tokoyami asking for the Ponzu, and instead monologuing in his head about how far he's come on his journey so far. It was a pretty meta moment. Give the bird his Ponzu, damn it! Outside the dorms, we see All Might and Aizawa talking about how All Might's meeting with Stain will need to be postponed, and that he'll work with Aizawa to help train Eri. And first up, a meeting with Stain sounds a bit ominous, and interesting. I kinda want that to happen sooner rather than later, because it would be really cool to see how Stain reacts to Small Might. And Eri and All Might is a combo I didn't know I wanted, but now I desperately need to see them interact. I think it would be really cute. All Might goes on to tell Aizawa that he's decided to try to keep living, but that he feels powerless, and that whilst he's happy the students are getting stronger, he's sad that he can't do anything to help train his ability of being strong for everybody else for years, and then being forced to retire when the danger's starting to peak must be pretty terrifying. Especially when you really haven't been training your success. He serves as a living example to them, a living legend. And actually, so true. If he was dead, there would be mass hysteria and panic. Even if he doesn't have his quirk anymore, he's still a comforting presence. Not just to the students, but to the society as well. It's very important for him to stay alive. We then finish off with the setup for the war arc, with Hawks thinking about how Shigaraki has a hidden backer, who we know is the Doctor, and that the hospital is the key as referenced by Shirakumo earlier in the season. And then we also see that the class are completing their transition to child soldiers, ready to fight in a war they really have no business fighting in as first years. I don't think this is going to end well, but my god, am I hyped for next season. And that brings us to the end of the video. And this episode was good. Had drama, had comedy, a little bit of action. Ticks the boxes, really. It was a little light on plot, but I think that's to be expected from a finale episode. But what they did show was very good and flowed nicely with the fluffy slice of life stuff. That being said though, those are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Like it? Hate it? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know.